think so.
know. A certain hush fell over the room.
I'm going to call the regular meeting of the Board of Aldermen to order on Tuesday, February 13th, 2024 at 7:30 PM in the Aldermanic Chamber. The prayer will be offered by City Clerk Dan Healy, and Alderman at Large Gloria Timmons will lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty to manage the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity and understanding which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us God. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance, please.
Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
Alderwoman Timmons.
Here.
Alderman Moran.
Here.
Alderman Thibodeau.
Here.
Alderman Govea.
Here.
Alderman Lopez. Alderman Sullivan.
Here.
Alderman Clemens.
Here.
Alderman Senate.
Here.
Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderman Teo.
Here.
Alderman Clee.
Here.
Alderman Dowd. Alderwoman Kelly.
Here.
Alderman Wilshire.
I'm here. I did hear from Alderman Lopez that he couldn't join us this evening. He had a personal commitment, and Alderman Dowd is not feeling well, so he's not joining us this evening.
So 13 present and 2 absent.
Thank you. Mayor, did you wish to address the board this evening?
Yes, Madam President. Well, first, we dodged a storm, so that was good. A little easier to get here that way. But, Madam President, I want to speak specifically tonight about the 2 memos we sent, you and I, to the Board of Aldermen. The first has to do with the list of city projects that we can assemble and our ability to afford these projects. The CFO, John Griffin, has said that at a maximum, the city should incur debt in the amount of $30 million a year for the next 5 years at a maximum. And even at that level, it will push the budget for bonded indebtedness, in other words, principal and interest, up above its current level. There are way more than that many projects in the queue. And so you and I, President Wilshire, proposed that the Board of Aldermen, or we appointed an ad hoc committee to go through these projects, look at the entire list, go through the projects, and help the city determine what the priority should be. We have fire contract, we have potential fire projects, the library, the Keefe, the Public Works Garage, many projects. So in order to address these in an orderly fashion, this committee will help us to set priorities, which projects are most important. And once, in the next few days, we will begin to schedule the meetings, which will occur in the evening. And of course, anybody who wishes from the board or from the public wishes to attend can do so. But the point here is to set priorities and determine which projects should proceed first, because we cannot afford them all in the next 5 years. The second memo, Madam President, has to do with the request for an additional $8 million for the 2 schools. Those are Maine Dunstable and Birch Hill. When we as a group here agreed to embark on these projects, we were informed that The total cost would be $32 million, and that $16 million would come from the federal government, the so-called ESSER funds, and $16 million would come from the city. Seemed like a good deal because we were getting a 50-50 deal with the federal government. It seems that sometime in the intervening year and a half or year and a quarter, the ESSER funds may have been, that were intended for these projects, may have been diverted by the school department to something else. And at least as I look at the committee meetings and explanations, do not understand and don't believe that we have gotten a clear explanation as to where the ESSER funds that were supposedly going to go to these projects went or were assigned, and when that decision was made. So, Madam President, our memorandum to the board suggests that we table or refer back to the committee for the opportunity for the school department to give us a clear explanation. These projects probably need to proceed because they're well on the way, but if we'd been told way back that there was only 12 million, we might, I don't know, we might have made a different decision. Maybe we would have gone with one school and held up the other one, or something else. Maybe the same decision would have been made, but I think you, the Board of Aldermen, who are required to vote on this, as well as the taxpayers of Nashua, deserve a clear explanation. Finally, Madam President, I wanted to mention a sad event for many of us. George Kadis, a very prominent business person in downtown Nashua and a former resident of Nashua, passed away recently. His funeral was on Saturday. Of course, George was the owner of Nashua Paint and Wallpaper. Had been involved in that business for 50 years and more. He expanded that to Ace Hardware, where he had the downtown Nashua store as well as stores in Bedford and Manchester, and he was also into the flooring business. George was a very unique individual. It's hard to completely describe him. He was very generous. He gave every year a lot of money to Nashua Back to School, was one of the founders of that 20-year program. Very successfully run for these past 20 years. His passion was baseball, and he had a close relationship with Ted Williams before Ted Williams passed away, and was very involved in raising money for charities at various baseball parks at Fenway and other baseball parks in the United States. So it's a sad day that George did pass away. I considered him a close friend, and I know many people knew him and admired him. I'm sure you're among those, but I wanted to mention it, Madam President, because he was such an institution in the city of Nashua. And that is all that I have tonight, Madam President.
Thank you, Mayor. Responses to the remarks of the mayor? Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. And I'm sure the mayor may have forgotten compiling the list, but I would like to see fit to pause in memory to Fire Commissioner Paul Grant, who has just recently passed away. Paul was a very dedicated individual, loved the fire department, gave a lot of his time and attention to the matter, and as a commissioner, served as president of the Board of Commissioners. So he just did not run for this re-election, and his death is most untimely, but we wish him all the luck and best to his family during this difficult time, so thank you.
Anyone else? Alderman Tebow?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't know Paul or George at all, but obviously, respects to both their families during this time. I wanted to comment on the memo about the tabling of the 8.5 to do the roof. So I would ask the board if we could, I would like to at least have a little bit of a conversation about it before
someone puts out a motion to table. I think, because we could also re-refer it to committee. That may be the right thing, but once we say, put a motion out there to table, if it passes, we can no longer discuss it, or we can't discuss it once we put it out there to vote on. So it would be nice if we could have, it doesn't have to be 2 hours, it'd be nice to have just a conversation about it, because I think it's an important thing. We need to know where that money went, we need to know what the next steps will be. We can't just say, table it, or put it in committee and then never do anything with it. We need to make sure we're getting some kind of accounting on that. So I just want to throw that out there. Thank you.
You're welcome. Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I too would like to send my condolences to the Cadis family and to the Garant family. I did not know George much, but I hear so much from him from so many members within this horseshoe as well as within City Hall. So I know he was a key person to the city, but I did get to know Paul Garant, and sometimes he could be a little gruff, but he always did things with a big heart for the firefighters, and he was an outstanding commissioner. I'd also kind of like to add on to Alderman Tebow's message. And Mr. Mayor, if I may ask, have you sent them a list of things that you want them to answer? And if so, could that be provided to us?
Well, I haven't sent them anything, but I think the questions are fairly obvious and were raised, I believe, at the Budget Committee already. You know, the money that was intended for these 2 school projects, the ESSER funds, where was that reassigned? And when did that happen, and when did the department figure out that there wasn't going to be $16 million for these projects? And I think Alderman Tebow is correct. I mean, and President Wilshire already mentioned this, that maybe this should go back to the committee as opposed to a tabling, which makes sense, because that way the school department can come to the Budget Committee and at least explain what happened. And then the Budget Committee can decide, you know, what to recommend. But again, I believe those are the basic questions that we're looking to be answered.
Thank you. Those are the questions I know that I brought forward, as did others at that meeting. So thank you.
Alderwoman Kelly.
We're right next to each other, sorry. So I actually had a question as well. You were talking about the amount of debt that we should be taking on, and you mentioned a subcommittee. Were you talking about the school board subcommittee, or I was just confused as to?
Well, there's a memo on the agenda, excuse me. There's a memo on the agenda, formation of ad hoc committee. So we are proposing, we've appointed a committee to review the various projects. So the way I see this happening is we will bring to the first meeting the list of potential projects. The staff has gone through these and tried to provide as much accurate pricing or as they possibly can. Then the various departments who are sponsoring these projects can come before the committee to explain, you know, what the project is and why it's important. And then the committee can discuss and try to reach consensus as to how the city should arrange the priorities and which projects should come first, so that we at least have a solid plan in moving forward for the next few years.
Thank you.
I also want to mention George Cadis. He was a great guy. I walked into his office one day, and there's Rich Gedman sitting there. I'm a Red Sox fan, too, so George and I hit it off. But he will be truly missed. Alderman Moran, did you have something else to add?
Yes, my apologies, Madam President. It's a question that came to mind through Alderwoman Kelly. Who has been assigned to the joint ad hoc committee, or who from the Board of Aldermen is on it?
Alderman Gouveia, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Dowd, and myself.
No, it's me.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's Ben. Sorry, Ben.
It's on the memo in the packet.
I, for some reason, don't have it in
I
my.
don't either, same.
And then from the city, it's myself, Director Tim Cummings, Director Matt Sullivan, and Director Lisa Foto. You know, George was an incredibly good tipper. I should have mentioned that, too. I mean, like, you go to Martha's, and the waitresses always did really well on the days that he showed up.
Recognition period.
None.
Reading minutes of previous meetings, there being no objection, I'll declare the minutes of the special and regular Board of Aldermen meetings of January 22nd and January 24th, 2024 be accepted, placed on file, and the reading suspended. Communications requiring only procedural actions and written reports from liaisons. Without objection, I'll suspend the rules to allow for communications that were received after the agenda was prepared.
Communication has been received from Mayor Jim Donchis and President Laurie Wilshire regarding R-24-005. Communication has been received regarding minutes of the Special Board of Education meeting of February 7th, 2024.
There being no objection, I'll accept the communications and place them on file. Period for public comment relative to items expected to be acted upon this evening. We have two people signed up. Laura Colhoun.
It's Laura Cahoon at 30 Greenwood Drive. I'm here for R-24-005. First of all, I was appalled by Mr. Dow's behavior at the meeting of the day, like it was no big deal that we're short $4.5 million. I was able to get through the State Department of Education. They have no problem with right to know. They gave me the information within 6 hours, and I broke it down. And basically, I guess because the city is budgeted $45 million, they just continue to just input invoices into the state. And Mr. Dow was wrong, because right now we have $13,075,000 still available to us. The problem is, when you look at what's submitted, okay, $1.3 million was submitted for supplies, transportation, $65 million. Salaries and professional services, which I really thought was amazing because it included health care, pension benefits, everything else, that was $15 million too. Then you had, which I don't understand, and we should check this out, fund transfers of $745,000. We had software put into ESSA funds of $788,000. Computers of $1.5 million, which I thought was strange because we got so many computers, millions of dollars with the CARE money. We had professional development of $6.8 million. We had books of $668,000. Then you had the $6 million for Main Street, Main Dunstable, 6.5 for Birch Hill, 6.1 for Franklin, and then you had this thing called professional educational services of $1.8 million. And then you look at the budget for the school district this year. We have available still at the end of June $5.5 million. They should take some of the expenses that they put into ESSA, put it against the school budget as of June 2023, and give the break to the taxpayers. We should not have to pay because of the incompetence of the accounting department within the school district. Okay, this was budgeted back in 2022. There's no reason that all these expenses that should have gone through the school board did not go through the school board. And I think it's unfair. As far as the roof is concerned about additional $2 million, I think that's also pathetic. If we actually bidded out this project and they didn't realize that this building was from 1960 and had 2 roofs on it, then they have no right to put a roof on a building, okay? I think the city should rebid it out and get somebody who actually knows what they're doing. Thank you. And if you want any of this information, I'll gladly send it to you.
Next, we have Lori Ortolano.
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. Thank you for the mayor producing a memo to send this back to committee or do whatever you need to do to engage in a little more discussion on that. I think it's the right thing to do, and I'm glad to see that happening. I came here in October of 2022 and spoke against that money to bond to do the 2 schools and match it with the ESSER funds. And I was pretty harshly treated by Chairman Dowd and criticized for my lack of support of the schools. And one of my criticisms was, we don't have good accounting and we don't have good control of the money. And he put it on me to say, how do you suggest we do it? Which a citizen coming here to participate and, give a viewpoint shouldn't be the one in the hot seat to tell you how to do your job. I was treated very poorly. Now I'm back to see that we have this $4.5 million of money that wasn't there and was used for something else. And, I think that I want to know when it became known that this shortage of money existed, because the project was done over the summer. And I think that's a reasonable question for all you board members to know. I did not appreciate how Alderman Dowd conducted himself at that meeting, and I wish he was here tonight. And I feel the board should have called a point of order and admonished him for his conduct, because he made a demand that you all had to deal with this right now. We have bills to pay. We got to deal with this right now. It was an ambush on a very serious issue involving $4.5 million of accounting. And clearly, as soon as he found out from the school district that $4.5 million wasn't accounted for, he should have come, as soon as he knew, come to the board to disclose it, and certainly not make a demand on Thursday night that you all had to give a vote of support on this right now, because we got bills to pay. Laura's right. I think if that extra money sits in the bottom line with $5.1 million, use some of it. Regarding the roof,
1 minute.
a good contractor knows if there's 2 membranes down and you're gonna have to peel them off. I'm sorry, that is just unacceptable, and I'm an engineer. There is just no reasonable way that they didn't understand the work that was gonna be done on the roof. We've had a long-term relationship with Harvey, and that's fine, but I'm encouraging you to start thinking about developing a new relationship with a contractor or introducing other people. Maybe it shouldn't be 100% Harvey.
30 seconds.
Maybe we should look to expand and, not put all our eggs in one basket so heavily on, 100, 150, $200 million of projects. I think that's the proper thing to do. So I'm anxious. I put in a right to know to get the accounting, because of course I have to. And I want to know what's going on with the money, and I will pay attention. But thank you for taking this back and engaging in discussion to figure out what the right thing to do is.
Communications requiring final approval.
Communication has been received from Mayor Jim Donchis regarding contract in excess of $1 million Continental Paving.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you, Madam President. I will move to approve change order number 3 for the 2023 paving program, contract 1 to Continental Paving Incorporated in the amount of $3,891,763. Funding will be through Department 160 Admin Engineering, Fund 54210 Construction Services / Bond.
You've heard the motion. Is there discussion on that motion? Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam President. For this and the next motion, my question, I watched the meeting the other night, and we're adding $9 million to the paving budget. I understand that. I noticed that we've bonded over $35 million for paving since 2018, including an additional $7.5 million last year. So that all totals up. My question is simple. Do we have enough money in the bond to cover this?
I don't have that answer.
Okay.
I can get that answer for you, but I don't have it.
Well, the simple answer is yes. I mean, there's a balance, and there's a separate account for the paving, and there's a balance there. So, I mean, there's sufficient money to cover these contracts, yes. Okay. Could I have one follow-up? Would you happen to know the balance, or should I reach out to CFO Griffin? I think, to get the exact number, I think you should ask CFO Griffin.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Communication has been received from Mayor Jim Donchis regarding contract in excess of $1 million Sunshine Paving Corporation.
Alderman Govea.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to approve change order 3 for the 2023 paving program, contract 2 Sunshine Paving Corporation in the amount not to exceed $5,160,387.50. Funding will be through Department 160 Admin/Engineering, Fund 54210 Construction Services/Bond.
You've heard the motion, discussion. Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be voting no on this. I've made my comments about it on the Finance Committee. I just don't think these guys do a good job. They have damaged taxpayer property too many times and taken months and months to send them reimbursement checks. And we're not talking about, someone putting something on city property that gets damaged and they think it was theirs. We're talking about actual lawns and irrigation systems that have been damaged. And I've also fielded numerous complaints about the professionalism of some of the folks that are working on our city streets. So I can't justify voting to support $5 million to a company that's literally ripping off the taxpayers, ripping up their lawn. Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That motion carries.
Communication has been received from Mayor Jim Donchis and President Laurie Wilshire regarding formation of an ad hoc joint committee to provide recommendations on debt service planning relative to anticipated capital expenditures over the next 5 years.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. I motion to approve the formation of an ad hoc joint committee to provide recommendations on debt services planning relative to anticipated capital expenditures over the next 5 years.
You've heard the motion. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Petitions,
None.
nominations, appointments, and elections.
Nashua Arts Commission, Charles Evans, new appointment, term to expire July 30th, 2026, 8 Strawberry Bank Road, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03062. Paula G. Lockhead, new appointment, term to expire January 31st, 2027, 4 Westbrook Drive, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03060. Zoning Board of Adjustment, Andrew Sylvia, new appointment, term to expire January 31st, 2027, 6 Autumn Leaf Drive, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03060.
There being no objection, I will accept the appointments as read, but, I'm sorry, I'll start over. There being no objection, I'll accept the appointments by the mayor as read and refer them to the Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee. Reports of committees. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the January 18th, 2024 Human Affairs Committee be accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I will declare the report of the January 22nd, 2024 Budget Committee be accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the January 24th, 2024 Special Finance Committee be accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the January 29th, 2024 Working Group and Regular Committee on Infrastructure be accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I will declare the report of the February 5th, 2024 Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee be accepted and placed on file. Confirmation of mayor's appointments.
Animal and Dog Park Advisory Committee.
There being no objection, I'll confirm the reappointment of Kathy Abel, 41 Manchester Street, Nashua, to the Animal and Dog Park Advisory Committee with a term to expire October 31st, 2026. Is Kathy here this evening? She will be sworn in at a later date.
Downtown Improvement Committee.
There being no objection, I will confirm the new appointment of Fouad Mahfouz, 27 Main Street, Nashua, to the Downtown Improvement Committee with a term to expire November 2nd, 2026. And I don't see him here this evening. He will be sworn in at a later date.
Historic District Commission.
There being no objection, I'll confirm the new appointment of Annalisa Law, 78 Concord Street, Nashua, to the Historic District Commission with a term to expire January 31st, 2027. Would you come forward and take the oath of office? Just come right up to the attorney.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all of the duties incumbent upon you as a member of the Nashua Historic District committee according to the best of your abilities and agreeably to the rules and regulations of the city charter and the Constitution and laws of the state of New Hampshire, so help you God.
So help me God, I do.
Thank you.
Business and Industrial Development Authority.
There being no objection, I will confirm the reappointment of John Stabile, 48 Lutheran Drive, Nashua, to the Business and Industrial Development Authority with a term to expire September 22nd, 2025. I don't see Mr. Stabile. He will be sworn in at a later date.
Conservation Commission.
There being no objection, I will confirm the reappointment of Carol Sarno, 15 Rocky Hill Drive, Nashua, to the Conservation Commission with a term to expire December 31st, 2026. Is Carol with us? Come forward and take the oath of office, please.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as a member of the Conservation Commission of the City of Nashua, according to the best of your abilities, and agreeable to the rules and regulations of the city charter and the Constitution and laws of the state of New Hampshire, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Zoning Board of Adjustment.
There being no objection, I'll confirm the alternate to member of Joshua Nahili, 10 Roderick Circle, Nashua, to the Zoning Board of Adjustment with a term to expire September 11th, 2024. Is Joshua with us this evening? Come forward, take the oath of office.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all of the duties incumbent upon you as an alternate member of the Nashua Zoning Board of Adjustment, according to the best of your abilities, and agreeably to the rules and regulations of the city charter and the Constitution and laws of the state of New Hampshire, so help you God? I do. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who volunteers for these positions. It's very good for our city. Unfinished business resolutions.
Second reading of R-24-004 relative to the supplemental appropriation of $51,843.88 of fiscal year 2024 unanticipated revenue into Fund Number 7024 Opioid Abatement Expendable Trust Fund.
Alderman Senate.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion for final passage of R-24-004 by roll call pursuant to Charter Section 49.
You've heard the motion. Is there discussion? Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. Would it be too late to sign on as a sponsor of this?
Attorney Bolton.
It's up to you if you can allow that.
Not too late.
Thank you, Madam President. Please sign me up as a sponsor, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Oh, no, sorry, roll call.
Roll call. My apologies, Madam President.
Rough night here.
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderwoman Timmons.
Yes.
Alderman Moran.
Yes.
Alderman Thibodeau.
Yes.
Alderman Govea.
Yes.
Alderman Sullivan.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Senate.
Yes.
Alderman Geddy.
Yes.
Alderman Tebow.
Yes.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
13 yeas, 0 nays.
That motion carries, and Resolution 2404 is declared duly adopted.
Second reading of R-24-005, authorizing the mayor and the city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed the amount of $8,500,000 to fund additional costs for the building renovations at the Birch Hill and Main Dunstable Elementary Schools.
Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Madam President. I was prepared to file make a motion to table, but after hearing my colleagues, I'm prepared to make a motion to re-refer R-24-005 by roll call back to committee. And I'd like to speak to that motion.
You may.
Thank you, Madam President. I too share many of my colleagues' concerns regarding just tabling and not having a conversation about this important legislation. I feel that we do, of course, need more information, and the right spot to get that information is at the Budget Committee. And while I will always support children, making sure rain doesn't drop on their heads in a school, I think the taxpayer deserves to know exactly where and how the money is spent and how we overspent before we pass this bond. Thank you.
Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. I'm going to support that motion to bring it back because I think it keeps the door open for conversation, which I think we need to have. In looking at this now, a few days later, there's a lot of federal money that came at the city really fast. And I think that, no excuse, but I think we need to really look at where it went, where it was supposed to go, and I think that that begs for a larger conversation with members of the school district here to help us along in that conversation and make the best choice for the city. So yeah, I'll support that.
Alderman Tebow?
Thank you, Madam President. A few things about this. So a couple clarifying things. The schools were 1970, not 1960. The other piece too is, I know I've seen some emails about firing people. Well, we can't do that here. That has to be Board of Education. So I just want to clarify those two pieces. Now on that point though, tonight we were supposed to look at this on spending $8.5 million to put 2 roofs on 2 schools, and I don't see Mr. Donovan or Superintendent Andrade here. I would think it would be in their best interest to want to be here to talk about their side of it. Mr. Donovan the other night spoke at the budget meeting and he said, well, it's complex. It's complex. So I don't think anybody here is stupid. Maybe I'm the dumbest. I don't know. I've been called dumb by a lot of people in the city, but I don't think we're too stupid here to understand if someone tells us exactly what happened with that money. You can't brush it under the table by saying something's complex. Now, we're in the middle of building this, so at some point, we're gonna have to find a way to pay for those roofs. But I think we need a proper accounting from the school district, exactly what's going on. And last night at the school board, and I didn't get a chance I was talking to Alderman Sullivan about it, hey, we can't be at every meeting of everything that goes on in the city, but I did hear that through the union reps that they're talking about some massive cuts. Now, I don't know, that could be 12 teachers, that could be 100, I don't know. But when you say massive cuts, why are we now cutting things? I thought we budgeted properly, and then we have all this federal money coming in, and now we can't put 2 roofs on, nor can we keep staff. So what is going on over there? And I think it's up to the Board of Education to dig in, but it's also, when it comes to the purse strings, that comes over to us. So I think we need to get that information. We're gonna be heading into budget season, and we're gonna need to know what we budget next year for the school, and what they send to us, and if we're gonna approve that or not. So I think it's critical that they send us stuff, and I think referring it back to committee is probably a better thing, because it's going to keep it on the fire, right? We're gonna keep talking about it, and if we table it, I'm afraid we're not gonna talk about it again for 4 or 5 months. And so we need to make sure we get this information, we need to make sure we're having good conversations about it, we need to know what's going on over there. I know Alderman Dowd, to his credit or not to his credit, I don't know, did say, well, that money, it went to somewhere else. Well, it's important to know where it went. That's money. It's not $2, it's not $10. We're talking millions of dollars. I mean, when we're talking millions of dollars, it's the right of us, it's the right of the people to know where that money went. It's not too complex, and it's not just somewhere else. We need to know where it was already sent to go to these schools. So why did they take it away to go to something else? If it needed somewhere else, they should have come back to ask more money for that other stuff. And like I said, it's disappointing that they're not here tonight. So I will support the change to put it back to committee.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Madam President. I agree with everything that has been said by my colleagues around this table. And during that meeting, other conversations happened, talking about the Franklin School, that suddenly they needed to do an HVAC and they had to pull $6 million from the ESSER fund. But then they said something about only needing $4 million. Well, where's that $2 million going? So I really would like accountability, and I really hope that it's not just Mr. Donovan and Mr. Smith. I hope this time the superintendent comes as well, because I'd like to know what their process was. I asked very specific question about, was this basically an overpromised? In other words, were too many people being able to put in for the request? I know you put in the request, and that it had to go to the state for approval. So was it a free-for-all? Did it go through one channel? I'd really like those answers, and I want to know what their process was. I want to know where each of the monies was, much like the public wants to hear. I think all of us want the same thing. I don't want to point fingers at anybody, but I'm very disappointed, because I think as a result of this and the projects that we've been doing, many things are going to happen. They're going to have to cut staff. And fine, we build the building, we have beautiful schools and so on, but we're not going to have the teachers in there to do it, and we're going to have overcrowded classes. And then, in all honesty, we all know how I feel about Mount Pleasant. You know, I can kiss any hope of that being able to be saved in any way, shape, or form. So we're going to see things on the chopping block because this wasn't handled properly, and I want people held accountable. I don't want anybody fired, but I do want accountability, and I really hope that they come prepared, not with excuses, but with accountability. So thank you.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. I agree with a lot that has been said here. I think that, you know, $4.5 million's a big mistake, but there was a lot. If everyone recalls, during COVID, things were changing almost daily in terms of how we could use these funds, and it was definitely hard for people at City Hall to kind of figure out how this was all going, because it was evolving day by day. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not saying that we shouldn't look at the process and make sure that it's better, but it was something that city staff were just kind of drinking from a fire hose in terms of how this funding could be used and when it could be used. And I remember Mr. Donovan saying, they said, oh, you should put it within this grant, et cetera. So I can see some of those things factoring into how this played out. But I think for us at the Board of Aldermen, it's hard. We don't always get purview into what's going on with the school budgets. We were only asked for a bottom line, or $4.5 million. So I would like to see us, when we come back to committee, really have some of that detail so that we can understand why we are where we are, and are there opportunities or alternatives for us to find some of this money. Thank you.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yeah, I agree with what was just said, because now I'm not on the budget committee, but as an alderman, what I will be looking for is to see how we can pare down this cost, and to see what are the things that were presented from the other night are not maybe priorities, are not maybe necessary 100% to get the cost down, and then how much of that can be funded from the school district. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of accountability that needs to be addressed here, and so I'm going to support sending this back, but I hope that the superintendent shows up and gives us some answers.
Alderman Govea.
Thank you, Madam President. I agree with a lot of what has been said already, and I agree with the motion to bring this back to committee to keep that conversation moving. At the end of the day, I refuse to let our schools crumble because of what we're seeing is almost incompetency at central office when it comes to how we're managing this type of money. I'm sorry, but overspending by what it looks like by $4.5 million, it's just inexcusable. You do that at anything else, and it's a lot more than coming to a board and just asking for what this is basically a bailout bond. Let's finish the project, so we have to bail them out by bonding even more. And there needs to be some real conversations that happen over processes going forward in how this is managed so this doesn't happen again. We can't see this coming to us 2-3 times or every time they want to do a project. Emergencies happen, and we'd be the first ones to help them through any sort of emergency. But this was 100% avoidable and was self-inflicted solely on bad budgeting, bad overlook, bad oversight, whatever it might be. And I think this board is owed a lot of answers, and I wish the school department was here tonight, but it is what it is. Thank you.
Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Madam President. First, let me say that for what all my colleagues have said, I'm 100% in your corner. I do agree. But that being said, I also do know what the city charter says. And the city charter says that the school department is completely autonomous. They are elected and recognize their rights. So therefore, any meeting of the committee, through the chair, if we can have corporate counsel being at the meeting if he sees fit, just to advise the committee of, to make sure that we are doing it respectfully and within the right way and by what the intentions of the authors of the charter intended in doing so. Do we need to get to the bottom? Absolutely, but there's a correct and legal way to do it, and but you know, it's enough to make me incensed to go running off the handle, but we gotta think clearly of this. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, the motion, Alderman Moran.
Sorry, just one thing. First, wise words from Alderman O'Brien. But two, I too just have to publicly express my frustration that no one from the school committee, not from the school committee or the school district is here on something that's important. A bit disappointed, and I see that is shared around the horseshoe. Thanks.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam President. Just one more thing on that. And you know, they mentioned it, citizens mentioned it earlier, and I have nothing against Harvey, so this isn't a pick at Harvey, but the planning part of this whole thing, not going, I wonder if there's 2 roofs on there. I wonder if I mean, in my house, I know that I have 2 roofs, and I haven't put one on in 20 years, but I knew there was a second roof there. And I was told, we didn't keep records. School's from 1972. It's not from 1922. So, you know, and even if you don't have a record of it, if you're gonna put a roof on, wouldn't you kind of wonder if there's a second roof, especially if it's gonna be that much money to put on roofs? I don't know what the other schools, when they renovated them, if they had the same issue, but did they? Because if they did, why wouldn't we think that, because some of those were even older. So why wouldn't we think that there would be 2 roofs there? And so they've already bored down into them. So at some point, we gotta get them fixed no matter what, but my point is the planning part of it. They weren't thinking of things in a way where, they weren't thinking of the what ifs, and the gym was a contingency, but now we want to do it. Well, if we wanted to do it ahead of time, why did we put it as a contingency? It should have been budgeted in the beginning. We knew we were going to put classrooms in there. We knew we were going to wreck the floors. We knew we were going to need new gyms like the other schools where we put all new gyms on. So I think the planning of this was poor as well. It's not just the misplacing of the money, which is clearly important, but it's the planning of it. And I know, to Alderman O'Brien's point, you know, we don't run the school board or anything like that, but at the end of the day, we get that final sign-off on any money that goes to them. So I would hope that, I mean, we could just keep rejecting it if they're not gonna answer to us. And again, I don't wanna be too hardcore about it, but we're talking millions of dollars. So that's it. I just wanted to add that piece. Thank you.
You're welcome. Motion is to re-refer. Further discussion? Alderman Kelly.
Sorry, this is a side conversation here, but I'm interested in how the ad hoc committee that you put together, which is important and something we've been talking a lot about, is going to communicate with this board and the budget. Because, for example, if this comes back to committee and it is determined that the only way we can do this is through bond, how are we gonna know where we are in our budget of how much bond we can put out a year?
That's a good question.
It was a long one, too.
It was.
Well, who's the question to? Me? So I think, you know, we will, of course, the committee will do what they decide to do, but I think we give a written report to the full board. As far as this has to be included in, you know, the totals.
Yeah.
So actually, in year one, more, some of that 30 million is already committed. Year one's would be the year beginning July 1. And this would, were this approved, it would add another 8 million, and very little would be left on a $30 million allocation in year one. But, so this would have to be part of the calculation. And I think that's what you were asking,
It
right?
is.
Yeah.
Alderwoman Kelly?
Yeah. Do you have an idea, I know this is a new committee, about how long that will take? Because I think it's gonna be important for the budget committee to know, when we think about this.
I don't, but as quickly as we can do it.
Motion before, Alderman Jettie.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I support the motion to re-refer it to committee. But, as I hear the slings and arrows being launched at the Board of Education, I would like to point out that the construction of these two schools is under the jurisdiction of the Joint Special School Building Committee, half of whose members
I sit right here.
Board of Aldermen. So it's not just the school department that may have missed something here. It's a joint special school building committee, so the blame is jointly held. But I think, we ought to find out what the answers are to the questions and get this resolved. But it's not just the school department that was responsible.
Well, as a member of Joint Special myself, I didn't climb up on Main Dunstable or Birch Hill to see if there were two roofs up there. So, we have professionals that came to us that said, we can do this for this money. They're reputable. I mean, aside from climbing up on the roof to see how many layers there are, I wouldn't know that. Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. And I, too, was a member of the Joint Special School Board and two other members here, or three, actually. One of the things is that what the Joint Special School Board does, so a special committee does, is that we get the project, we're told what is going to be needed in order to be able to accomplish this and so on. When we do this, it has gone to the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed is the one who brings it forward, makes their decision and so on. We just follow it through and make sure that it happens. We get the updates and so on. We don't necessarily approve the thing. I do believe we did award the contract, though, based on what they said the price was, but it's the Board of Ed that approves the finance of it and so on. So, and I'm not saying that that the Joint Special School Board, one of the things that I will definitely say did happen on my watch too, was and I brought this up, the gym being put into contingency. We were basically given the impression that this was something that if we had money we would do. The truth is, no, it wasn't if we had money we would do it. We had to do it regardless. So that's kind of something that stuck in my craw the other day when I spoke. But the truth is, it does lie within the Board of Ed. The Joint Special just kind of follows it through and so on. And we do ask questions about, do we have to do this? Are they going to do this? And the Board of Ed members that are there ask that question. But ultimately, that money for the ESSER fund and so on has nothing to do with the board, the Joint Special. So thank you.
Alderman Clements?
Thank you, Madam President. And from what I understand from the other night, the roof issue would have been something that, had that $4.5 million been there, the roof issue would have been something that we could have dealt with, probably. It wouldn't have been as big of a deal as it is now, because not only are we short $4.5 million, but now we have this other thing on top of it, right? So the blame, if you will, does lie with the superintendent, does lie with the school board at some level for spending that money that we had allocated for this project. Doesn't go back to the joint special, because, yeah, when you do a project, you can plan for it, and there's gonna be things that happen, and that's why you have a contingency budget for it. And I think that the Joint Special School Building Committee did a good job with that. The issue that we're having is that missing money. And I think what's more infuriating to me about some of this stuff is that not only is that missing money there, but now we're being asked to add other things into this, which is why I made my original comment, which is what can we pare down from this ask? And I think that's what the Budget Committee should be looking at when we refer this back, because there's things in here that, as was mentioned, were put into contingency, and now we're being asked, no, we actually need to do this. Well, do we? Because it wasn't on there before. So there's a lot of things that need to be asked, but I don't think that the blame comes back to anybody sitting around this horseshoe. So I just want to make that, my opinion, very clear on that.
Alderman Sullivan?
Just to remind us how we get to the 12.5 million. For those that don't know, you can go back, you can watch the joint special meeting from December. It was less than 60 days ago. But what makes up that 12.5 million? We have the 2 million for the roofs. We have the 2 million for, in my opinion, we're broadening the scope of the project, bringing in the,
Fencing.
thank you, fencing, contingencies, whatever. So we're widening it. We left it off the list. Now we're bringing it back on the list. The balance of that are the $4.5 million of ESSER funds. That is the crux of this issue. So if anybody, I'm just trying to simplify here to say, how did we get to the 12.5? That's how we got it. Roof, scope of project, makeup of ESSER funds. That's how we got up to it. If we didn't have this ESSER fund problem, we'd only be talking about probably a $2 million roof problem. That's my opinion. Otherwise, now we have to talk about the other 8, whatever. I can't do math in my head. Too complex. I just wanted to put that out there, so.
Okay. The motion is to re-refer. All those in favor?
By roll call.
Roll call, okay. Ms. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderwoman Timmons.
Yes.
Alderman Moran.
Yes.
Alderman Thibodeau.
Yes.
Alderman Govea.
Yes.
Alderman Sullivan.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Senate.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Tebow.
Yes.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire.
Yes,
13 yeas, 0 nays.
that motion carries. And Resolution 24005 is re-referred to the Budget Review Committee.
Point of order, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion, but I'm not sure if it's in order. So I'll state it, and I guess we can ask Attorney Bolt. Having voted on the prevailing side, I'd like to make a motion for reconsideration of the Ad hoc Joint Committee in Debt Service Planning, and I'd like to speak to that motion.
We're on other things now. You can provide notice and bring it up at the next meeting.
Okay, I will do that. I'm sorry, Madam President, I did not know the rule.
Okay.
Thank you.
Second reading of R-24-006 relative to the acceptance of the 2022-2023 Downtown Nashua Circulation Study for use as guidance in planning and future decision-making.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. I motion for final passage of R-24-006.
Motion is for final passage. Discussion on that. Alderman Jettie?
This is the circulation study?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I watched the the Infrastructure Committee meeting at which this was presented, and I was unable to attend the meeting, but I did watch the replay of the meeting. And, you know, the biggest thing I saw was the reversal of the one-way system. I've always wondered why, it was configured the way it was. It always seemed to me more logical that, that Temple and Factory Street would go west, and that West Pearl and East Pearl would go east. Just always made more sense to me. So I'm glad I see that as part of the thing. What I didn't hear discussed was the idea of whether the consultant was asked, rather than reversing the one-way system, did the consultant consider going back to a two-way system solely for the purpose of traffic calming, slowing down the traffic? I'm very familiar with the traffic on Factory Street, and I know that now Factory Street goes east, and except the fact that Factory Street is in such disrepair, does have an effect of slowing the traffic down some. But when that's repaired, I know that traffic still now, and certainly when it's repaired and is a nice smooth surface, cars just go very, just speed along, and there've been certainly some near misses, and I think some accidents involving pedestrians there. So I don't know if this would be a good idea or not, but I'm wondering if the consultant was asked whether or not a two-way system, going back to a two-way system for Factory and Temple and, the Pearl Streets, whether that would make any sense or not. And I don't know if, as a result of this study, by adopting this, are we committed to this, or is this just a conceptual thing, and that there's going to be more discussion about exactly how it happens? But certainly, if the consultants say we need it to be one way for whatever reasons, I'm certainly, I think going back to the one, going to the Pearl Streets going east and Temple and Factory going west makes tremendous sense to me, and that my only reservation is whether a two-way system would be even better.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Madam President. I know I brought up the question of, was this etched in stone or was this guidance? And we were told that it was guidance. Probably we paid all this money for these decisions, so they're very professional people, so we're probably more likely, but that does not preclude us from saying, okay, you're saying that Factory Street should continue one way in this direction. It doesn't stop us from saying, we'd like this to be two ways going in both directions. That was kind of the answer that I was given and indicated, because I was concerned that we would be stuck with this, because there are certain things that I don't necessarily agree with, and I would like to have that conversation. But it gives, I believe, Director Sullivan and Director Hannum that ability and flexibility to kind of, and engineering, I should say, Public Works also, the ability to kind of create a plan and so on. But I think it's still allowed for wiggle room. And it's the same thing, I think, to some extent with the next agenda item as well.
So we do have Andrew Hill, who was one of the consultants, and Matt Sullivan, both on Zoom.
I think Andrew was for parking.
Good evening, board members. Matt Sullivan.
I'm-
Alderwoman Klee has absolutely correctly addressed this. This guidance is intended to, this document, I should say, is intended to serve as a guidance document for future decision making. While it does contain specific recommendations for reversals and modifications to the street geometry, those will be fully subject to further conversation with certainly the Board of Aldermen and the Board of Public Works and further public and staff involvement. That said, I think the recommendations are important, and they do sort of represent a sort of a preferred layout, but that's not to say that future conversation and guidance from the board and members of the public would not result in a different solution. But we feel comfortable with this being a comprehensive set of recommendations for circulation across the downtown. And I would just note that any modifications to some of the reversals or direction changes in here, like any piece of the study, may require further adjustment to other sections of the study. This really works together. That's the intent of the downtown circulation study as a comprehensive document. But this is not stealing a final seal on any specific recommendation contained herein. There'll be a further opportunity to discuss.
That answer your question, Alderman Jettie?
Yes, but, since we have Mr. Sullivan and the consultant available, was the two-way,
Considered?
going back to a two-way system, was that considered? Was it not recommended for reasons that would be willing to share?
We have Alderman
I'm getting
Director
a
Cummings
promotion
here.
tonight.
Director Cummings, who would like to address that.
So good evening, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. I rise before you to address Alderman Jettie's particular question at hand. And yes, it was studied. There were certain parts where going two ways within this quote-unquote circulation would be more feasible than other areas. Case in point, you could go two ways on West Pearl Street. There will be trade-offs for that decision, loss of parking. You could go two ways along Temple Street. Trade-off for that will be loss of some green space and some traffic calming with some islands that are along the way, drive cost up a little bit when you actually redesign the road, but could be accomplished. Ultimately, we need to have further discussion as to what we actually implement for a design. But what we're looking for just this evening is to ensure that we have good policy directive, because we will be moving forward with starting designs. And we want to make sure that as we are giving direction to the consultants, and I just want to make a reference, the consultant on hand tonight is not relative to the downtown circulation study, but for the next resolution in front of you, which is the parking study. But when we procure our professional consultants to start with design on some of these elements, we want to make sure we're giving them good policy guidance as to what the pleasure of the community is. And so that's why we're seeking to ensure that we understand that this Board of Aldermen is interested in seeing a reversal and seeing a downtown flow as outlined in the resolution before you. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. So my question is actually in regards to this one and the next one. I would personally love to see us have a special board where we look through these and just have a high level. We've done that in the past with like Livable Nashua, once that was done. And I had many questions that I wanted to ask as well. And I just, in these cases where there's these larger studies, the parking study that we've been waiting on for a very long time, I think rising it to the level of the board so we get some additional opportunities to ask questions would be appropriate.
Alderman Klee.
Thank you, Madam President. It's never a bad idea to bring the whole board in, but a lot of it was discussed at the Infrastructure Committee, and I know many of the board members might not be able to make that, but in addition to that, I also want to say is with this one and the next piece of legislation, there's been a lot of public hearings and even going out and talking to people and asking questions. The consultants did a lot of that. And to that, I give a lot of kudos for. So they tried to get public input sometimes where they were standing, not just holding meetings and so on. So it was a very dynamic type of situation, but I'm never against, bringing people forward, but I don't want to see this delayed. Perhaps, as we're going forward, we could do that. Thank you.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam President. And at the end of the day, before anything gets done, there's gonna be legislation that comes before us for each of the things that needs to be done. This, agreeing to this doesn't mean they're gonna go out and just start building this thing. They're gonna start designing behind the scenes, and then stuff's gotta come in front of us and in front of probably, I don't know, Public Works and some of the committees, infrastructure or whatnot. So, even though we're saying, start to do this or start to look at it, there's still gonna be opportunities for us to influence what happens, along the way for the next few years. So, like everybody said, this isn't set in stone, it's just giving them direction to start moving forward on this so we can start looking at what we need to do. Thank you.
Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Madam President. I respectfully disagree with my colleague regarding needing a special committee where a joint committee of PEDC and infrastructure could address some of these as well with a majority more of the board, and especially since it has to do with planning. I do concede that a majority is infrastructure and changing and ripping up piping and other things, but when we're looking at the overall planning, I think the two committees should come together.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Just responding that I actually agree that we do the work in the committees, but when we have these large studies that we get information that we're also supposed to use in our decision-making, I think it makes sense to have, even if it's just a 15 minutes, here's what we came up with. To the point of my colleague, some of us have other obligations in terms of committees that are at the same time as infrastructure, et cetera. And I just think having that transparency out there for everyone to see as well would be appropriate. I want to know what's in the parking study. We've been talking about it for like 3 years.
We have.
I do know.
Motion is for final passage. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries, and resolution 2406 is declared duly adopted.
Second reading of R-24-007, relative to the acceptance of the 2022-2023 Downtown Nashua Parking Study for use as guidance in planning and future decision-making.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make the motion for final passage of R-24-007, and I would like to speak briefly to this motion, please.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. Those that remember, everybody here is invited to infrastructure. Snooze, you lose. The Infrastructure Committee, and I thanked them from the bottom of my heart. The meeting started at 5 o'clock. And we got out in time at 7, and then reconvened into the official infrastructure meeting where this was discussed. This is similar to the other motion where nobody's got the shovel, nobody's got the pick. It's the discussion of what we're going to do with this. It may be very much so that it does not have the support from members of this board. Yeah, there might be 1 or 2 wards that might be interested in this, but the majority of the wards may not be interested. There are people out there who do not want overnight parking and strange cars or whatever in front of their house, and that had invested wisely into the increasing of their driveway. But it seems to be isolated to certain type of wards. So we're gonna have a long way to make a discussion on this. But again, we need some guidance. And our guidance has been Mr. Andy Hill with Desmond Associates. What we did in the past is piecemeal street by street. It was an error. some of the streets that were previously approved do not meet the standard for emergency response. We haven't really looked at what to do with trash collection on certain nights. Can you park there or not park there? There's a lot of unanswered questions that still need its answers to. And so working with a template, and I'll call it a template for, you can say it's a guidance, but working with something is a lot better off than any other boards had, worked on in the past. Took us a long time to get here. The city's big, and the wards that are affected that we looked at are large wards. And Mr. Hill walked every single one of them, as with people of the parking department, and had their input. So I urge you to support this. Again, nobody's got to pick and shovel. This is just to continue the good work and looking. And after we come up with the plan, then it's going to be up to you as members of the board whether you're going to support this or not. And then we'll make the decision from there. So, thank you, Madam President.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. I plan on supporting this, this resolution, but I will say that it goes beyond the parking per se. We say, in some of our minds, we think it's going to say, okay, you can park here, you can't park there. It looked at a lot of our regulations. So, for instance, I'm going to use a street within my ward, Cross Street, where it hits Canal Street. We have rules of the road or rules of parking, however you want to call that, that says you can't park 25 feet from an intersection. Well, that particular street has, we made a special rule for that and said 15 feet from the intersection. What this proposes to do is maybe grandfather some of those that are in there, but not allow that for the future. Or maybe it won't grandfather it in. But that'll be the decision, and that's what this guidance does. It does more than just say, you can park here and you can't park there, you can overnight park or you can't overnight park. It looked at everything, and Ms. Stansfield and Mr. Hill and, so many other people did so much work on it. Truthfully, I don't like everything in it. I don't like the idea that there's a chance that Cross Street could lose that special exemption, or some of the other streets. There's regulations now that most people don't even know. You can't park behind someone's driveway. So I look at Summer Street and say, oh, it looks like there's lots of parking there. But if you put these rules, you can't park within 2 feet of a driveway, and you can't park across from someone's driveway, you might find that there's no parking there at all. So that's kind of what this did, is it kind of redesigned that, looked at it, said the rules that we have on the book, should we change them? Should we grandfather things in? And that was a conversation that happened. I think this is a good template. I like the word template, guidance, to move the conversation forward. Otherwise, we're truly the dog chasing our own tail. We need to have something to start with, and then this board can say thumbs up, thumbs down, or kind of go back to the drawing board. We paid Mr. Hill a lot of money, and he's very good at his job. So I think we should move this forward by approving it, but doesn't mean that we have to accept everything in this document. Thank you.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I'm going to hesitantly support this this evening. I am a true believer that there are major things that this contemplates that we need to grandfather in certain areas that are doing things a different way or our own way right now. So while I'm going to hesitantly support this, I think I'm doing so with the caveat that it is not appropriate for the places that already have overnight parking. This is to look to expand the program elsewhere. And I think we need, from my point of view, that's how I'm looking at this.
Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam President. Not only am I going to support it, I sponsored this bill. None of what's mentioned in this study affects Ward 9, except the fact that when you expand parking and you look at the facilities that we use, the parking garages mostly. The reason I endorse this is because this study recommends that we start thinking of our parking unit as an enterprise unit, like we do solid waste or the storm water system. And I really like that. I mean, there were some good ideas in here about the automatic arms being used on the parking garages. I like those ideas. I like the fact that, you know, we can start, I think that as you look at the city as a whole, and I think that this study addresses it, we're leaving a lot of revenue on the table, revenue that we could be using to rebuild those parking garages that are falling apart. And, you know, we talked about bonding. That bond could be at one level, but because we're saving money by maximizing what we're doing with parking, we can ultimately save our taxpayers money down the road and have nice, shiny, new parking garages. So I'm endorsing this, and we'll vote yes on this resolution.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to support it for a lot of the reasons Alderman Sullivan said. I think that, you know, I think it's been a long time coming to look at downtown and see how we can fix that in a better way to help, you know, pay for some of itself, right? Self-sustaining. It won't be 100%, but at least something towards that. The one thing I'm not big on is the parking overnight all over the city. I don't agree with that at all. I think there are some places downtown where you might have to do some on-street parking, but I'm certainly not for putting it all over. People have big driveways, especially in the 8 and 9 wards and maybe some of the other places in the city, and I just don't think that, you know, people should have 5 spots in their driveway and then 2 in the street. It's already, people do it already now, and there's really nothing punishable there anyway, so I would just leave that as is unless they really need it somewhere downtown where it is tough to park. So, thank you.
Further discussion? Alderman Jettie.
Thank you. I too am going to support this. You know, one of the, you know, similar to Alderman Tebow's statement. When I you know, when I watched the meeting, you know, one of the things that struck me was the adoption of the concept that our parking system should be as self-sustaining as much as possible. And, you know, I think, you know, that's a good thing. I think that, you know, that the parking is an expensive operation, and I don't think, you know, that it ought to be a burden on all of the taxpayers. I think, you know, the people who use it, people who benefit from it, you know, ought to be, you know, supporting it. And, you know, what this plan does is pushes us towards a, you know, raising the rates and looking at making it, you know, self-sustaining, which I totally endorse. You know, but you know, so I'm gonna vote for this, but I do take, you know, exception when, you know, somebody on a committee that I'm not on, you know, kind of resents my asking questions or my making statements about a piece of legislation that the committee has vetted and has made a recommendation about. You know, and a statement like, you know, you snooze, you lose, I think is kind of disrespectful, and I don't think it's appropriate. I think, you know, if we have no input, you could have passed this at the committee, and it wouldn't come before us. You wouldn't need our votes. But the committee is not able to pass the legislation on its own. It can make a recommendation, and it comes before the full board. And every member of the board has an opportunity at this meeting, you know, to ask questions, to hear an explanation, and determine their vote. And I agree, you know, I know I was at the first part of that meeting that you had, you know, with the working group. It started at 5 o'clock, and I know it went for for a couple of hours, and then you had a very short break, and you went into this meeting for another couple of hours. And I know it's very, very difficult to sit through all of that. And besides the meeting, I know you've done a lot of work on this, and I really appreciate all of that. But, you know, if I still have questions, I still have a right to ask them. And, you know, I hope that, you know, that the board will, understands that. That's the law. That's the way the rules are written. You know, we have an opportunity at this full board meeting, you know, to question what the committee did. And so, thank you.
Alderman O'Brien?
I don't know how to respond, but I will say I do take some umbrage when somebody takes their version of reality and tries to interpret that into what I know as actuality of what really has happened. Everybody in this chamber, let me clearly state again, is welcome to come. There's Channel 16. If you can't make the meetings, feel free to watch it. Don't come in here surprised. You know, it's part of doing one's homework. And yeah, I have done a lot of work, and I don't have a particular stick in the mud, as with my colleague Alderman John Sullivan. My parking in Ward 9 is fine. I'm looking at it globally, what's best for the particular city, and trying to do what is best. So, that may not be up to your standards, but you can walk any time in my shoes and carry the world that I'm carrying on this particular issue. Because what is going to be decided, once this cat gets out of the bag, it's going to be here forever. You will not put the cat back in the bag. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. And if we don't do it right, then I don't want any part of it. Because this must and shall continue. It will be the letter of the law for this particular city going forward. Thank you.
The motion is for final passage of Resolution 24-7. Alderman Senate and then Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you, Madam President. Just maybe for the sake of calming tensions a little bit, I also was not able to attend the first meeting of the Infrastructure Committee where this was brought up. But it is my understanding, and Alderman O'Brien can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the decision was made at the working group portion of that to continue that conversation with more working group conversations. So I think the opportunity is there, and we should certainly all take it.
If I may, Madam President, there's going to be other working groups on this. This is not, by any sense of stretch of the imagination, a finished project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. I also take exception to the conversation around if you couldn't make it, then you don't get to have questions or information. We've had multiple reports about the parking studies coming, the parking studies coming, the parking it's not even in the agenda. You go through 183 pages, we're accepting these studies, they're not even in the agenda. You had to know to look at infrastructure and the last meeting, and most of those say revised. Are these the final plans? So I feel like I understand that we all have our committee work, but when there's something that rises to the level of a parking study that we've been waiting for 5 years, a sustainability plan, a circulation plan, something that is going to affect every decision we make in this horseshoe, there should be no issue with having a discussion here at this board or questions at this board. And I appreciate that the work has been well thought out, well done by the Committee on Infrastructure, by PEDC, by all of the people who are working on these studies, but we need the information if they're going to be the law of the land.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to clarify that one of the good things about the working group is that it includes fire, police, all the emergency members, not just the committee members from there. We heard from them as to how this affected them. We heard from Public Works how any changes could affect how they would pick up trash and so on. So it's a and I was glad to hear at that working group, because I felt like there were so many more questions to be asked, that we would still continue the conversation, with Public Works. Again, just for clarity, this is just as a guidance. I don't think any of us are going to be 100% happy with everything that's in it. And this strongly affects my ward. Ward 3 and Ward 4 and probably parts of Ward 6 are going to be very, very affected about decisions that are made on this. So I think, the three of us at least should definitely be there listening, asking questions. I've not been on infrastructure until this particular session, so I do plan on going it. To the comments about, I agree, we try to make the committees. We can't always make our own committees. So how we all handle it, that's how we handle it. And I'm not going to add to that conversation, but I just wanted everybody to know that the work group truly is a work group, and we talk about the size of the road, what it can handle. If cars are there, can a fire truck get through? Can an ambulance get through? Can police get through? So that's truly, the crux of what that is. And I hate to say this, but I think I don't want to stifle conversation, but I think the argument that we're having here as to who should attend and who shouldn't attend might need to be cautiously tempered. Thank you.
Alderman Moran?
I concur, and that's why I would like to move the question.
Motion is to move the question. All those in favor? Say
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The motion is for final passage of Resolution 24-7. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
That motion carries. Resolution 24-7 is declared duly adopted.
Second reading of R-24-008, authorizing the mayor to enter into a Fourth Amendment to concession agreement with Granite Diamond LLC.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. I move for final passage of R-24-008.
Motion is for final passage. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries, and Resolution 24-8 is declared duly adopted.
Second reading of R-24-009, authorizing release of certain stormwater easements and restrictions.
Alderman Sullivan.
I make a motion for final passage of R-24-009.
Motion is for final passage. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries, and Resolution 24-9 is declared duly adopted. Unfinished business ordinances.
None.
New business resolutions.
First reading of R-24-010, relative to the supplemental appropriation of $10,325.50 of assigned fund balance into Fund Number 7024 Opioid Abatement Expendable Trust Fund.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderwoman Timmons, Alderman Moran, Alderman Senate, Alderman Tebow, Alderman Clee, and myself. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Budget Review Committee and schedule a special Board of Aldermen public hearing on Monday, March 25th, 2024, at 7 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber.
First reading of R-24-011, authorizing the mayor to enter into an amended federal aid project agreement with the state of New Hampshire and the town of Hudson for the purpose of rehabilitating the Taylor Falls and Veterans Bridges, to amend a related agreement for reimbursement with the town of Hudson, and to accept and appropriate $2,027,280 for the project.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Moran, Alderman Tebow, Alderman Clee. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Budget Review Committee and schedule a special Board of Aldermen public hearing on Monday, March 25th, 2024, at 7 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber.
First reading of R-24-012, relative to the supplemental appropriation of $5 million of assigned fund balance into Fund 7026 Capital Equipment Reserve Fund.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien. Given its first reading, I will assign that to the Budget Review Committee and schedule a special Board of Aldermen public hearing on Monday, March 25th, 2024, at 7 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber.
First reading of R-24-013, relative to the supplemental appropriation of $4 million of assigned fund balance into Fund 6600 Benefits Self-Insurance Fund.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderwoman Timmons, Alderman Clee. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Budget Review Committee and schedule a special Board of Aldermen public hearing on Monday, March 25th, 2024, at 7 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber.
First reading of R-24-014, relative to the supplemental appropriation of $500,000 of assigned fund balance into Fund 7025 City Retirement Trust Fund.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderwoman Timmons, Alderman Clee, and myself. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Budget Review Committee and schedule a special Board of Aldermen public hearing on Monday, March 25th, 2024, at 7 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber.
First reading of R-24-015, relative to the supplemental appropriation of $150,000 of assigned fund balance into Department 128 Risk Management, account 89650, transfer to Property and Casualty Self-Insurance Fund.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Clee. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Budget Review Committee and schedule a special Board of Aldermen public hearing on Monday, March 25th, 2024, at 7 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber.
First reading of R-24-016, relative to the supplemental appropriation of $53,442 of assigned fund balance into School Department Accounting Unit 91.1.992225, account number 53628, Contract Services.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderwoman Timmons. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Budget Review Committee and schedule a special Board of Aldermen public hearing on Monday, March 25th, 2024, at 7 p.m. and here in the Aldermanic Chamber.
First reading of R-24-017, relative to the acceptance of $33,929.50 from United States Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance into Police Grant Activity 2023 Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant Program.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderwoman Timmons, Alderman Moran, Alderman Thibodeau, Alderman Gouveia, Alderman Sullivan, Alderman Senate, Alderman Tebow, Alderman Clee, and myself. Given its first reading, I will assign that to the Human Affairs Committee.
First reading of R-24-018, relative to the acceptance of $86,015 from the State of New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services Exotic Species Program and to authorize the transfer of matching funds.
The resolution is not ready for prime time. It's been removed and will be brought back at a later date.
First reading of R-24-019, relative to the acceptance of an additional $377,874 from the State of New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services into Transit Grant Activity Federal Transit Authority, FTA, operating grant.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderwoman Timmons, Alderman Moran, Alderman Senate, Alderman Tebow, Alderman Clee. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Human Affairs Committee. New business ordinances.
First reading of O-24-001, authorizing a stop sign on 12th Street at its intersection with Will Street.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Moran, Alderman Clee. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Committee on Infrastructure.
First reading of O-24-002, increasing the compensation for certain boards and commissions.
Additional sponsors, Alderman O'Brien. Alderman Moran. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the person.
Sorry, me too.
I'm sorry, Alderwoman Timmons. I will assign that to the Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee.
First reading of O-24-003, establishing a fee for parking spaces utilized for extended outdoor dining.
Additional sponsors. Alderman Senate, Alderman Tebow, Alderman Clee. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Planning and Economic Development Committee.
First reading of O-24-004, establishing the School Street parking garage.
Additional sponsors. You're already a sponsor. Alderman Moran, Alderman Govea, Alderman Clemmons, Alderman Clee. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Committee on Infrastructure.
Madam President, please, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, Alderwoman Kelly, that's a sponsor as well. Period for general public comment. One person has signed up, Lori Olano.
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. Wanted to talk to you. I sent an email to the board about putting right-to-knows on the city website that are being done by the right-to-know administrator. I think that would be helpful. I'd appreciate that. I'm not embarrassed by my work at all and the others that are coming in, and I hope you'd make that available so other people don't have to file right-to-knows to see what right-to-knows have been filed. And other towns do that, so I kind of thought it was interesting and it would be worthwhile. I spoke to the Finance Committee a couple months ago about engaging the Board of Aldermen in having a discussion about our right-to-know policies and processes. And I was hit with a bucket of cold water on that. And, you know, when Kim Kleiner was here, she came to the board and addressed what was going on in the assessing office 3 or 4 times and had these quarterly meetings and updates, which her presentation of the problems in the assessing office allowed the public to use the governing body to put something out publicly that we could listen to and gather information. All of the right-to-know issues that have gone on since she left have never been addressed by the Board of Aldermen. There is no discussion up here by the governing body, and I think there should be. And I pointed out that the towns of Hudson and Milford had their citizens sue them on right-to-know issues. Their citizens didn't do well at all. But even though they didn't do well, both towns formed committees, worked with the public to try and create a uniform process within their town governments to handle it. Now, Melbourne Moran pointed out that I had done a disservice by using the town of Hudson as an example, and he discussed this issue that had happened in the police department, and honestly, it was so garbled, I really couldn't understand it. So I took the video and I sent it to the Hudson Board of Selectmen, and they forwarded it to the police department, who called me and explained what had gone on in this situation. And it was really interesting, because I wondered how Alderman Moran knew about that, and it turns out William Dolan, our representative from Nashua, I think Ward 5, was involved in a dispute with Hudson, and on a right-to-know request through the police department. And the Hudson Police Department gave me all those records. And I don't think Alderman Dolan's right-to-know was handled correctly. He had to go to the ombudsman. It wasn't handled correctly. He did get his records. He had to fight for them. It took 2 or 3 months. It was resolved. But Alderman Dolan, or House Rep Dolan, now has become a supporter of not charging fees because of his experience and what happened in Hudson. And I think you should know that police departments function with their right-to-knows completely different from City Hall. And I don't think we should diss Hudson's process on how they are handling right-to-knows through their selectman office and with their citizens. I think we shouldn't diss any other town around us who's tried to make an effort. I think it was an honest effort and it's good. And the person who rejected House Rep Dolan's right-to-know was Nicole Clay, who came from here and was trained here. So, you know, let's consider it, and I would like the board to consider trying to do something to offer right-to-know information to the public. I had to file a right-to-know request after 2 months to find out what's going on with right-to-know policy and procedure last week, which is really frustrating to me, because I wanted to get it without having to file a right-to-know, and I've been looking for it for months. Thank you.
Remarks by members of the board. I'm going to start over here tonight.
Thank you. I actually just wanted to invite the board to come to the personnel meetings that are moving forward. What we've been doing is talking a little bit about everyone who serves the city in a volunteer capacity and making sure that all of the committees have a full complement so that they can meet and have quorum, and also make sure that they have alternates in place in case they have that issue. So it was nice to see an alternate put on the planning committee. We're also going to be doing little presentations. I'm going to put an invite out to all the committees, chairs, to just tell us a little about what's going on in the committee. Hopefully it aligns with maybe a reappointment or an appointment that committee time, but at least we can get some purview into what's going on and if there's anything they need in support, and also kind of our market or advertise in a better way how these, what these committees are working on and how people can get involved in the city. So join us, it's gonna be so much fun.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President, and I'm glad that Alderwoman Kelly is doing what she's doing, and the Personnel Committee is doing that. As a person who's been on a number of committees where they don't have quorum or something, I think this is going to bring a good light to people who may want to volunteer. So marketing, however it is you want to word it, I think it's a perfect idea, and thank you for doing that. I'd also like to take the time to congratulate Alderman Moran on being named Social Worker of the Year. It's quite an honor, and we appreciate having you here under the circumstances and so on. So I'd also like to wish everybody a happy Valentine's Day. And I learned today is called Happy Gals Day. Galentine's Day, thank you. Meaning that women who are friends and so on, they celebrate today. And I'm going to take a personal time here. On Friday will be my husband's birthday, and I want to wish him a very happy 75th. He's going to cringe when I say that, but happy 75th birthday, and I'm looking forward to wishing him a happy 76th next year. So, thank you.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam President. Happy 76th, or
75th.
75th, I was rushing you. And congratulations to Alderman Moran for winning that award. That's, when you get one from your peers, that's more important, I think, than popularity. It means you're doing good work, so thank you for that. I want to thank the committee for re-referring the $8.5 million back to committee so the budget committee can look at that. I appreciate that. And Alderman Moran for making that motion. Two other things, I just want to say, or a couple other things I want to say. Congratulations to Josh Caruso, who, if you don't know him, he's a kid at Nashua South. I think he's currently a junior. He scored 1,000 points in basketball and is now the all-time South record holder for points scored in basketball. And he's still only a junior, so I assume he's going to continue to build on that record. Caruso family has been big on basketball for a long time in the city, and congratulations to him. I think that's an awesome thing. And also, I think within a couple of meetings here, we're going to have a kid governor come and present her, I guess, agenda or platform. And she lives in Ward 8, so I'm very excited about that and can't wait to see her here. Miss Lively will be presenting her. I think her platform has to do with animal stuff, so she will do that. And lastly, if Alderman Clee is going to do it, I got to do it. Happy Valentine's Day and birthday to my wife, whose birthday is literally tomorrow. No way. Probably the hardest birthday, and I'm sure she doesn't hear this because she's sick and probably home asleep in bed. So, but happy Valentine's Day and happy birthday. I won't say the year. Thank you.
Alderman Senate.
Thank you, Madam President. I know we had a couple of commemorations at the start of the meeting for Cadis family and the Grant family. I guess I'd just like to add to the somber mood by recognizing that I had learned earlier this month that a Ward 7 resident, Anita Ruthier, had passed away earlier in January. Mrs. Ruthier, as I've always known her, was a cafeteria worker and a paraprofessional at Pennachuck Middle School far too many years ago when I was a student there. I'd later come to work with her son, Dawn, for some time when I spent some time working at Sears. And, I know Anita was very beloved by her family, and she will be missed. And she's very fondly remembered by myself and my peers who went to Pennachuck. So I just want to recognize her passing, give all my best to the Ruthier family. Thank you.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't mean to extend the somber mood, but I do want to give my condolences to the Cadis family. George was, as was said, was a phenomenal person, gave a lot back to the city. And so did Commissioner Paul Garant. He served with distinguished honor on the Fire Commission for many, many years. And we often saw eye to eye on a lot of things when it came to city government and how things should run. When it came to national politics, we couldn't disagree more, but I always appreciated the lively discussion with Commissioner Grant, and I just want to wish his family all the best and my condolences. But I also want to mention that we lost a former citizen of Nashua, State Representative Christine Conis, passed away. And she was a state rep back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And she was a fantastic representative up in the State House. I believe she represented Ward 8 in Nashua up there. She did a tremendous job serving the city, was a great Democrat, and I really want to convey my condolences to her, as her family as well. So, thank you.
Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you. 6 Nashuans raised their hand tonight and stepped up to be on the voluntary board, so I really want to applaud them and everybody that sits on these boards for no pay, but just because they love our city. 3, especially tonight, we have Carol Sarnow, who's on, now that I'm aldermanic liaison, I can use this, the CONCOM, also known as the Conservation Commission. She's a Ward 9er, so I appreciate her stepping back up. Lisa Law, the Law family, obviously has a rich history here in the city, and I really appreciate her stepping up on the Historic Committee as well. And then finally, John Stabile, I've known for a long time, and before I got into city government, and now that I'm on the BIDA committee, he sits on that. He's getting reappointed, so I'm happy to, every time that guy opens his mouth, he really has a lot of knowledge in there, and I learn every time that he talks. So I'm glad that he's rejoining the BIDA committee. And there was something else that I had to say. Oh, I wanted to, I love the idea of the ad hoc committee, because really it's not necessarily a discussion about any specific legislation that's coming before it, but it's a larger strategic discussion, especially around bonding. But I think any strategic discussion that we can have, Alderwoman Kelly referenced it, that maybe you use some committee time to talk about larger discussions, getting caught up on maybe some projects that you haven't heard of in a while. I think that I'm not a committee chairperson, but if I were, I think I would always carve out some time throughout the legislative year to get the people caught up on what's going on, and I think that that's a worthy exercise. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thanks a lot.
Anyone else over here? Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Madam President. First, before anything, happy Valentine's Day to my wife. I'm sure she's listening keenly. Second, thank you, Alderman Cleve and Thibault for bringing up. I just learned yesterday I won Social Worker of the Year by the National Association of Social Workers for the state of New Hampshire, and I'm still very at loss at words, and I know you guys know that it's hard for me. It is something for your profession to pick you, and it's not a vote of popularity. It was based on, from the thing that they sent me, it was based on very specific work I do in the mental health field, and serving people of low income, the LGBTQ population, and also legislation that I've passed here, helped sponsor and pass here at the board and at the State House, and to be recognized that as like an incredible honor. And I had like, I was in tears on the phone with the director of the state. And I express my thanks to all the social workers that voted for me, and I appreciate it very much, especially given last year, when my former political opponent filed a complaint against my license. I know Attorney Bolton's been in positions like that, when you're trying to do your work and it becomes political, and, you know, the Board of Mental Health seemed fit to find that not credible, and now my entire guild nominated me to be the social worker of the year, which is great. All right. I guess I did have words. The ad hoc attempt of reconsideration, I apologize for my naiveness. I'm trying to remember my time in the House of how to do a motion of reconsideration. I only thought of that as being a potential for discussion, basically, after Alderwoman Kelly brought up a key point is, you know, one hand talking to the other, and, you know, the budget committee seems to be the right place for that to happen anyways. And I had that thought after discussion on the bond, and then we're talking about the bond and about not wanting to overspend and accounting, and then we're gonna create this ad hoc committee who's gonna say what's gonna go on and go forward, and then, but the budget committee's also gonna be involved at some point. It just, after that, now I feel that might be some opportunity for things to get missed. And I think maybe it warrants more discussion, and I'll bring whatever process it is for reconsideration on the next meeting of notice. What does it, what do I have to do, Attorney Bolton?
Provide notice, get it on the agenda for the next meeting.
To whom?
Donna.
To the,
Donna?
to the president of the board.
Okay, thank you. And then, right to know, even harder for me to say that, you know, the member of the public got that last half, yeah, I agree with regarding the police departments and how they release information. It's separate from what the city does, and it is.
That's
a
not
thing
true, by the way.
It's not?
No,
Oh,
they consult me on every request they get.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in this particular situation, some of the work that I do in New Hampshire involves helping people involved in the criminal justice system get access to mental health care. And that is one attorney that shared that information with me. Other attorneys have shared similar information with me. And it has held up folks getting into treatment. That's where I look at it. I have no skin in the game on the administration side of how everything is handled, other than what's happens here at the city. But that is just an odd thing that we are agreeing on something. And the reason why my words at that finance committee were so jumbled is I wasn't sure if I could share it. I didn't know if I was violating anything. So I apologize for stuttering so much. All right. The last thing. This is going to bring a lot of political heat, I think, from the mayor's office. And I know Director Cumming, I'm sure he's jumping on his cell phone to text Chief of Staff Karen on this, but Mr. Mayor, I'm going to put you on the hot seat here. The 50 film screening at the Nashua Center for the Arts, April 29th at 6 p.m. The Friends of the New Hampshire Drug Court are putting on this excellent fundraiser, and the President of the Board of Aldermen and the Vice President of the Board of Aldermen have committed to attending, and I think it would be wonderful if the three highest ranking elected officials in this city could also attend, you being the third.
What's the date?
April 29th at 6 p.m.
It probably will work out, yes.
Yes. See, he never commits to anything. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Alderwoman Timmons.
Oh, thank you. One, I want to congratulate my colleague on the right. He's trying to put me into his practice by cracking his knuckles the whole night. It's driving me crazy, by the way. So, but congratulations, and stop doing that. It's not good for me. I almost got up and walked out. So anyway, congratulations.
Thank
I
you.
really respect and admire everything that you do. I think it's great.
I appreciate it.
Okay. Also, it's Black History Month, and there's a lot of events that's going on. One is we have an event at the library on February the 24th for Who We Are. If you'd like to attend that, it's at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Also, if you don't want to get out, there's a Netflix documentary called Stamped, STAMPED, from the beginning. It's a history, factual, of African Americans in this country, from slavery, prior slavery, all the way up to 2024. So if you can watch Stamped, that would be really great. Happy Valentine's Day, and that's all I have to say.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have this to say that I would like to thank my fellow colleagues and everybody, friends and family, that showed concerns. As some of you know, I was hospitalized again. By the time I made it into the emergency room, the doctor, my blood pressure was something like 60/40. And so the doctor says, "You shouldn't even be standing here talking to me." And I says, "Doc, I'm Irish. We're just too dumb to die." It's gonna take a lot more to kill us. But anyways, I had 2 thrilling nights in the ICU. It's a one hell of a place, to be. I got to hear the machines all night, so it was a lot of fun. And then they threw me up in another room, the cardiac room, and they have more machines up there too, But I tell you, the reason I'm here tonight is because of the great care of, we're very fortunate in Nashua to have one, in my opinion, a premier hospital in southern New Hampshire, as well as probably, I'm sure, kind of got equal care at St. Joe's. But to have a Mirage, a whole group of doctors and stuff like that is just fantastic. So feeling better and everything like that. So I just really would like to thank them all. Also want to wish my wife and my daughters and my granddaughters happy Valentine's Day. And to the rest of the city and to the rest of all of us, remember what those 4 dudes that rocked the world said in 1967, all you need is love, baby. So go out and tell somebody that you love them tomorrow. Thank you.
I too would like to congratulate Alderman Moran on his being selected by his colleagues to be Social Worker of the Year.
Social Worker of the Year, yes.
Very good, very nice. Also, my condolences to the family of Chris Conis. She was a wonderful person. I think she was on the board at the soup kitchen for a while too. Very, very nice person. She'll be missed. That's all I have tonight. Do I have a motion?
No, we have some.
Oh, we have committee announcements. Committee announcements.
Okay, thank you. Tomorrow, which is Wednesday the 14th, Valentine's Day, the Board of Health Committee meeting starts at 12 o'clock here. We're going to be meeting in room 208. And then the Transportation Advisory Committee is also meeting tomorrow at 12 o'clock. So even though it's Valentine's Day, the committees still work. And they're going to be at 30 Temple Street. On the 21st of this month, because we won't have another board meeting, we have the Cultural Connection Committee meeting at 12 o'clock here at the auditorium.
Committee announcements, Alderman Sullivan.
Tomorrow, Valentine's Day, room 208, BIDA will meet. Perfect way to spend a Valentine's Day. 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
AM.
AM.
Yes.
Any other committee announcements? Seeing none, Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to make the motion that the February 13th, day before Valentine's Day, meeting of the Board of Aldermen be so adjourned.
Motion is to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 9:34 PM. Thank you, everyone.